What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrett G. Money Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro? Happy Friday.
What up, bro? Happy Friday to you as well, man. I'm feeling like everybody else in New Orleans, man. You was with us. I'm shaking back. I'm still shaking back. I'm not 100% there. I'm Zion. I'm on a minutes restriction for like the foreseeable future, as far as work going, physical activity. But man, what about Mardi Gras this year? So quick little family story for people rocking with us. Our dad retired this year. Shout out to Pops. Retired after working 1,000 years in the banking industry. And so he decided that he was going to go crazy this Mardi Gras, right? And so our father decided he wanted to do Zulu Ball on Friday. He wanted to do Endymion on that Saturday. He wanted to do Bacchus that Sunday, which you joined him on the Endymion ride, which was incredible. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And then he woke up Monday and he decided to do a little London Gras, and then he rolled Zulu on Tuesday, which we rolled with him, all four of his sons. And if anybody is familiar with anything New Orleans and anything parade and anything Mardi Gras related, then you know that is an insane gauntlet, and we got dragged with him. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But I did make it to the Smoothie King Center last night to see the game against the Rockets. And so it was a fun atmosphere. But I think for the foreseeable future, Garrett Rattler will be on a minutes restriction as far as life goes, because we martied a little too hardy this season. But it was good having y'all down, man. Good having the kids back. And I'm looking forward to getting to this Pels talk, man. How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. Yeah, Mardi Gras was successful again. I know the weather guys try to play us on Mardi Gras Day with the winds and the storms and things like that, but we still got in the Zulu parade and everything like that. It was shortened, but we still made it happen. I'll tell you this time last year, we hopped on this pod and I was like, Garrick, I saw a lot more Pelican stuff than I did Say stuff. And for the second year in a row, I wrote an Endymion and Zulu. I saw a lot more Pelican stuff than I did Say stuff. And that's a wild thing to say during Mardi Gras time. It's just that I think the times are changing just a little bit from that standpoint. But it was a great Mardi Gras season. Shout out to all those that got down, especially those that was their first Mardi Gras and things like that. It was a great place to be. Mardi Gras. I know everybody has their stigma of what they think Mardi Gras is for people that are not in New Orleans. But it's about community. It's about family. It's about loving on one another next to you. And really, you saw a lot of that this season. So it was a blessed Mardi Gras nonetheless. Zion had a ridiculous dunk on Trey Murphy, even in a Lakers loss on Mardi Gras Day. But it was a great season that has passed us. Now, that's the only great season because the Pelican season has not been great. And before we get into that, make sure you guys are following us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you like us the episode below and make sure you subscribe to the channel. I saw some comments. People were like, hey, where did Garrett go on the last episode? We're going to be coming to you guys with more content. Garrett's not going nowhere. His last name is still Rattler. He's not going anywhere. We're just going to be coming to you guys with different things as we continue to build this thing out. So the Pelicans played the Rockets last night. The Pelicans have been playing better over the last 10 games or so, especially since Zion's really turned into form, and we'll get into that. But the Rockets were the first team outside of the Lakers that they played that really brings a different level of physicality. And this is one I kind of had circled on the calendar because I just want to see how the new era of Pelicans can adapt when people are physical with them. And Zion's been having his way with whoever was matched up against him in these last couple games, but the Rockets kind of present a different challenge. All in all, the Pelicans come out hot, guns are blazing. Trey Murphy has 21 in the first half, and then the Rockets tighten the screws, and you've seen something that you've seen a lot of over the last couple of games or so in terms of the others outside of the Pelicans. So first off, let's start there, touch on it real quick. Anything jump out to you in that Lakers game and that Rockets game last night that you said, that's something to keep your eye on these last 20 or so games?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious thing is Zion is really freaking good, and I think obviously that's the easy answer. But I think what Zion is doing in these past couple of however long he's been just like slapping the league left and right, is that he's doing this with a lot of factors going against him. And I think for me, the Lakers game, obviously, I got up for the Mardi Gras game on Mardi Gras night. It was tough, but I did get up to watch it. But that was the most running to the smoke Zion I've seen in a while. And what I mean by that is that, when you talk about Zion and you talk about his relationship with LeBron and Luka, and not personal relationship, but everybody attaches Zion to those two guys, and for different reasons, right? Obviously, Zion was the most hyped prospect coming out of the draft since LeBron. And are you going to be the next physical freak to come from the United States to take over that mantle as the next star? And then obviously you have Luka with him and the Team Jordan connections and going to Paris together and just being two young phenoms who everybody wants to see in the playoffs and have and have success and see these guys on big stages over and over again. So you had an opportunity to like walk in and play both of them. Obviously they're on the same team now, Fever Dream, but you had an opportunity to walk in there and on their home court in LA. And we've seen, opportunities where Zion goes up against these big stars and he's not available, right? How many times we've talked about when Luka was in Dallas, how many times you've missed seeing those two together, even though we both live in both the cities and we can never see them play together. And so you got an opportunity to go. And I mean, from the jump, the first play of the game was a dunk, and it kind of let the Lakers in the know and the rest of the people watching, like, this is going to be, I'm here. And you saw him locked in defensively. You saw him not settling for anything. He got whatever he wanted against that team, against that front line, including Jackson Hayes and some of those other guys. And he gave it to him over and over again. And I just think that could be looked at two ways, right? You can see it as Zion just being in a groove and doing what he does, but it looked like he was letting out a lot of frustrations out as far as the season, as far as the kind of the plan that goes on right now, and things like that. So I think you saw a lot of you're seeing Zion let out a lot of frustration out on the court. And it's turning into some of the most historic numbers we've seen as far as scoring and minutes and how many minutes he's playing and efficiency he's doing it. He's been incredible. And I think something else we got to start watching. CJ has had a really good season. I would say he's had a good season, not really good season, but he's had a good season. He's had some really big games, but we see this a lot with CJ, and it's twofold. It's one, getting towards the end of the season, you start to see him kind of burn out a little bit, right? Like you saw it last year going into the playoffs, and when they played the Thunder, like he burned out a little bit, and it's starting to look like he's getting to a point where he's that burnout is showing a little bit. The efficiency isn't there, and it's just some of the shots that he's taking. But on the other side, like, it's a lot of when it's time for these guys to play these big games against big teams, it seems like CJ always has, never has the game you need to have, him have. And it's a lot going into that. Like, CJ is an older player who's on a team. Like, you saw him right before the All-Star break, like, put everything out on the line for that game that they won. But he's on a team that's not really going anywhere this season. His contract is not, and it's something that we're going to talk about. His contract is not guaranteed past this season. And it's just like, past next season. And he's played a lot. He's played a lot of minutes, had to shoulder the load a lot. And it just seems like, it's something that I don't know if it's CJ is not comfortable playing these extended minutes as an older guy and his body gives out towards the end of the shot. That the first thing that goes is your legs. And when your legs go, your shot goes. And if this is something that, like, if Zion and other players are gonna miss time, and like CJ has to carry that load, for season, either next season or if there's anything but past that, like, is that something that like he's not capable of doing? And so that goes into without being broken down at the end. So that goes into what I've seen. He had a rough game last night. He had a rough game against the Lakers. It just seems like he's getting worn down mentally, fatigue physically, and it's not necessarily his fault. So those are some of the things. And obviously, Jordan Hawkins, his struggle as well, at least shooting the ball, because we talked about off the pod, he's doing some other things defensive wise and doing some other things that make you happy. But the things that he was brought in to do is shoot the ball, right? And he's hit a bit of a wall, and it's been kind of like a long wall that he's run into. And so he talked about the back issues that he's probably going to deal with for the rest of the season, and that he's been dealing with since college. And now you look at the Pelicans with this draft pick, coming up, which probably is going to be top 5 or at least, in the lottery or whatever, and get one of these good players. It starts to beg the question, like, how long is the leash for Jordan Hawkins, especially if this pick comes in and he turns summer league on his head and then is ready to play and contribute early. What does that look like for moving forward? So those are some of the things that I saw in these past couple games. Again, it's hard to get a full grasp of what this team can do when Herb and DeJounte are still out, which are, the stories for the Pelicans, wash, rinse, repeat. But it's very difficult to get a full grasp because DeJounte is a big part. He's a ball handler. He's a lead guard. He's a scorer. He's a defender. And then Herb is first team all defense. This isn't like a good defender or like someone who can come in like, Tamani Kamara is having a good season defensively. No, this is first team all defense, Herb Jones. And so it's hard when you're missing that much gravity, defensive gravity as well as offensive gravity on the team. So, we'll see. But I think those are some of the things that these past couple games that have kind of jumped out to me. What about you?
Yeah. A couple of things stand out. Just over the last 2 games in particular, I feel like it was a culmination of the season. Like in the Lakers game, obviously Luka and LeBron kind of had their way, and Jackson Hayes had a revenge game, go figure, versus the Pelicans, where they just had no answer for the pick and roll. And so the fact that the Pelicans couldn't rebound all season long really stood out. The fact that like no one outside of Zion and Trey could really get their own shot consistently really stood out. Like the fact that the Pelicans are just a small team altogether really stands out when you're playing versus these teams that have aspirations to go deep into the playoffs this year. And again, I understand that, Herb Jones is out and DeJounte Murray is out. But even then, you don't look at Herb as a guy who's consistently going to create offense for himself. Now, DeJounte, yeah, that's different, and you hope he makes a recovery there. But all in all, you just feel like the Pelicans are missing some of these things. And again, like for the next 20 so games, that's what this is about. It's about figuring out, what are you missing? What are the pieces that you need to add? What are the things that you're struggling with, even if you add those 2 back into the lineup? And how do you continue to bolster this roster and grow from there? So, like, as far as Zion goes, listen, you and I have talked about this for a long time. And BI is now in Toronto. We've talked about the conversation of Zion playing the 5 and Zion being the center on the team has never really made sense to me. Like, he plays the game more like a guard than he does a big. He reads the game more like a guard than he does a big. And so the fact that just because he's strong and that he has a lot of weight on him, he needs to play the 5, when in reality, he's probably the shortest guy you want on the court at any particular time, just never made sense to me. And the fact that now the Pelicans, by hook or by crook, like you like to say, are forced to play him at guard because your starting backcourt is out for the season and has been out for the season. I think you're finding that this is probably the best version of Zion. This is probably the version he likes the most. And
I wouldn't say probably. This is definitely the best version of Zion.
Right. And so if he's going to be more guard wing than he is wing big, you need to figure out, how are you going to build a roster around him that is conducive to winning, right? Like he has his first triple-double in under 30 minutes, which is insane. He only has 39 double-doubles in his career, and he has 6 of them this season in just 24 games. And like you're seeing career high across the board in rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, everything. Like you're seeing the best version of Zion that you can see. His on-off numbers are ridiculous. Like Jokic is first in the league. Zion is 5th in the league. Like it's so drastic when he sits down that, oh man, the Pelicans are in every game. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. And once he sits down, man, the Pelicans are missing a whole lot. Like it's such a drastic shift from one to the other. And you talked about it. And again, I tweeted about it. The offense is great. Again, you always knew Zion could score. You always, if you've been watching him, knew that he could pass. But what he's doing on the defensive end, the plus minus is not just offensive. When Zion sits down, the team gets worse defensively too, which is a crazy thing to say. Like he is one of the better defenders on the team night in and night out. He's looking for the best assignment on the other end, whether it's a guard, whether it's a center. Like you see him against Jokic, Sengu, whoever's cooking at the time, you see him taking on this. And that's what you need. He talks about it. Him and Trey need to kind of take that mantle of stepping up to the best offensive threats on the other team, just like the Celtics do with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like they are guarding on the other end, and you're starting to see him do that as well. And so now it's like, okay, well, how do you continually put pieces around him to both make him successful, but also when he sits down or when he misses games, because even though he looks great, he's going to miss games at some point in his future NBA future. You need to have a team that's conducive to still winning when he sits down. What do you add around him? So like when you think of pieces, obviously CJ McCollum, you brought him up a little bit. And, again, I think a lot of really all of CJ's tenure for the Pelicans, he's been put in positions to fail. Like he was not brought in to be the one option or the two option, but that's what he's been asked to do the majority of his time as a Pelican. And to your point, like he's starting to, weighing down at the end of seasons in the playoffs, because you're asking him to be, hey, CJ, we need 20 points every night. And as a player who's older, who's never been the most athletic in a league that's only getting bigger and only getting faster, you're asking him to do way too much because people just have not been available. But he's also the one giving you 8 threes a game and 20 points a night. So you almost kind of need him out there. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But when you look at, what you've seen so far with the double big lineup with Kelly Olynyk and Yves Missi and Carlo all in rotation, what are some of the pieces? You don't have to say players. What are some of the pieces you would look to add to this roster as you continue to figure out what Trey and Zion can be?
Raphael, I have been associated with the game of basketball since I was 5. I played bitty basketball, played AAU basketball. I did all that. I played park ball at Milton. Shout out to the Raiders. I played a little bit in middle school. I played in high school. I did all that. I coach men's basketball now. So I've been around the game of basketball for a good amount of time. I have never seen a team run a box and zone against a player. I've never seen it. I've never seen, we're not even going to have one person guard you and 4 not guard you. It was, we're going to have 5 people. No one's going to guard you, but we're all going to stand right in front of you. I've never seen the box and zone. And that's what the Lakers did against the Pelicans. And the reason they did that is because they are going to live with Carlo shooting threes. As good as he is, as good as he's been, we're going to live with Carlo shooting threes. Of course, you got to account for Trey Murphy, obviously. But everybody else, they tested their gangster. And it showed, after a while, obviously Zion still was getting him, but, with minutes restrictions and things, after a while, there was no offense to be run by anybody else. And by the time Zion was finished cooking and the minutes restriction was down, were done, the Pelicans were down by 20, game was over anyway. So you need the very first thing that we need that we need to talk about, that the Pelicans need to address, is shooting. They need more shooting. I understand, like you talk about CJ and his 8 threes a game. And again, you need them. You have to have them. But in an NBA and with a professional players on the floor, there should be no reason that a team feels that comfortable that they turn their backs to everyone on the floor to guard Zion. And you just asking Zion to make lemonade out of that. So you need to add more shooting to this team. There needs to be floor spacing. Now that we've all seen the Zion at point guard, at point guard, obviously point Zion has been a thing, but this has been more of not only are we going to play you at the point guard position, but we're going to put people, we're going to, as you say, treat you as the point guard, meaning everyone else is taller than you. So this is more like you remember point Zion, but you had Eric Bledsoe out there. Like there's none of that. There is Zion and then Trey and then Carlo and then Kelly Olynyk, just all these tall people. You have, and obviously CJ is out there, shooting, but most of the people are taller. So you need to put people on the floor that aren't afraid to shoot the ball and that can hit at a reasonable clip. I look at what Trajan Langdon did with the Pistons and for Cade Cunningham. Last year, Cade Cunningham was playing basketball in a box. There was no shooting. He just kind of was out there doing what he can. Now, the Pistons went out and got a whole bunch of people that can shoot. Fontecchio, they went and got Malik Beasley. They went and got Tobias Harris. None of these guys are like, oh, man, this is what's going to change the trajectory of the franchise. But what it did was it allowed spacing. And now Cade is about to be knocking on the door of an all-NBA player. And look at where the Pistons are. You need to give your superstar and give your stars space and opportunity to operate, especially if they're not going to be the ones also shooting the three ball, right? Like you see Anthony Edwards on the floor with Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, guys who not like knockdown shooters, but then Ant is taking 10 threes a game. So it balances out. Zion is not taking 10 threes a game. And so you need to have people who will be able to contribute and not be left wide open, because you're not getting your money's worth with Zion. Even though he scored 40 plus points against the Lakers and was 30 plus points and destroying them, that defense, there could have been so many more opportunities for other people to hit open threes. But and you saw Zion at some point be like, I ain't passing this no more. And then you saw him do what he does. So you need to add shooting to this team. And I think the other thing that I would like, and we talked all this time about, the point guard position and, what you need to have as like a backup point guard or the floor general that you need. I think we've got there with Zion, but you need to have other guys who can score without being set up by Zion. Like there's too many times that I've watched Trey Murphy, as great as he's turning into and the meteoric rise that he is taking, he still has times where he allows the defense to take him out of games, and Trey's just standing on the side and waiting. And you watch a CJ, and if he doesn't catch and shoot, he knows when the ball get past to him, he's going into his bag and trying to do things. And you're putting Bruce Brown out there and like all of these other guys who like are reactive players. I talk about proactive and reactive players. Zion is a proactive player. I don't care who's on the floor. I know how to get a bucket. And it doesn't have to be like superstars. There are Jordan Clarkson is a proactive player. Like DeJounte Murray is a proactive player. There are levels to proactiveness for me when you talk about players in the NBA. You need to add more people who are comfortable scoring, off the bench or without Zion on the floor. And so I think that is something, the shooting and scoring between Herb and DeJounte and Zion and Eves and Trey. Like you have solid defenders. You have defenders, Jose, Bruce Brown, you have defenders all up and down the floor. Like you can do that. The problem, and I feel like we've talked about this over and over and over again, is that there are not a lot of people that can get their own score. And we've talked about this for years. There's not a lot of people that can get their own shot as reactive, as proactive players and not reactive, playing off Trey, playing off Zion. So I think that is something that they need to address. They need to. I understand the defensive leaning from Willie Green and the defensive buy-in, and you want to continue to have that. But at some point, man, you got to have somebody who can put the ball on the ground and get you 20 points, 2 out of 3 games, and it comes out of isolation plays or not a lot of plays run for them, because you're just too dependent on what Zion can do, and if Trey has it that game. If they don't have it, again, you're relying on CJ to save you, and it's not pretty. So I just think that those are the two things. I think offense needs to be addressed this offseason, from the coaching staff to the shooting to the scoring. Offense needs to be addressed this offseason.
Yeah. Couple things there. First off, the Pelicans are never going to be like a super high volume 3-point team, because if the Pelicans are going where they want to go, Zion's probably not shooting 10 threes a game. And you probably want Zion taking the most shots on the team. So they're never going to lead the NBA in 3-point. That being said, I think you could arguably say that Zion has the most gravitational pull of any player maybe ever. And so if that's the case, you have NBA professionals sitting on the 3-point line, wide open, most possessions, because everyone and their mom and their dad is saying good, and the bench players and the players in the G League are trying to stop Zion. If you're telling me guys are not able to hit shots in those scenarios, that's a problem in itself. Like, the Pelicans may never lead the league in 3-point percentage or 3-point attempts, but they should be high in 3-point percentage because guys are getting right open looks. Look at OKC. Look at the Nuggets. They don't shoot a ton of threes every single game, but they're really good looks because guys know how to attack the mismatch in which they have, which in the Pelicans case, they don't have a whole lot of guys. It's one thing to play 5 out and say, okay, we're going to find the mismatch. But when DeJounte Murray is down and Herb is down and B.I. is in Toronto, you're not going to have the mismatch over the teams like the Rockets, who have 5 athletes on the floor every single play, every single rotation. And so in those scenarios, you have to have other ways to generate offense in some way, and you're not there. Now, again, I do expect growth in areas from like a Yves Missi and a Carlo Makovich, and I expect them to get better on the offensive end. And when the roster is full to some degree, find different ways to get the most out of those young players. But at the same time, you want to be able to say, okay, if we're not going to win the night on the defensive night, because on the defensive end, because the other team is just hitting contested 3 after contested 3, we have to be able to keep up, right? And those are the games where I feel as if the Pelicans are always going to struggle, where it's just a barn burner and you're fighting 2 versus 3s. And so how the Pelicans, continue to add to this roster and add, whether it's young players, whether it's free agent, whatever that may be, to kind of surround this team, that'll be extremely interesting to me. Like, you talk about, the Pelicans getting to the rim. And somebody on Twitter was going back and forth with me last night. I was like, well, when Zion sits down, it's almost like the Pelicans are allergic to the rim. Like, they just do dribble handoffs around the 3-point line, and no one ever attacks the rim. And they're like, well, that's because there's no one on the roster that can do so. I'm like, well, I would disagree with that. DeJounte Murray's out for the season. Trey Murphy was top 10 in free throw attempts in the month of January. But since Zion's coming back, it's almost like there's episodes where it's like, okay, I got to catch and shoot. And then there's also times like in the first quarter of the Rockets game where it's like, oh yeah, I was in the dunk contest. I can dunk on everybody in the gym. And like, there needs to be more of, okay, what is the defense calling on me? But especially when Zion sits down, Trey, you're the only person that can get to the rim consistently. You have to be the dribble penetration that leads out the threes for other people, because I think that's part of the problem too. When Zion gets down, not only are you not creating good looks for other people, you're forced guys into doing things that they're not comfortable doing. And I think that's a lot of what's leading to their offensive struggle. So we talk about the development and what you're looking for these next 20 odd games or so. Like, you kind of want this this season to hurry up and get to the draft in some of the ways, but there's still some things you're pulling out. And so for some of the young guys like an Eves, like a Carlo, Trey, Brandon Boston, who at some point he's going to get back on the court in some degree. What have you seen from those guys? What are the things of encouragement, or what are some of the areas you still say that's what he needs to go in the offseason looking to improve?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with the Pelicans' young players. I think the reason I'm optimistic about their growth is that they've shown spots where you're like, okay, that's an NBA player, and they're contributing in a way that does not seem like it's it's an out of body experience, right? You saw the best of Eves, right, when he was getting double doubles and was a defensive, menace. Now, obviously, people get footage and things happen, and you got to adjust, right? This is his rookie wall. The rookie wall is basically just people getting film on you and then starting to defend you and play you in other ways and scheme around you in different ways. And now you have to have it's your turn to adjust. So starting with Eves, I think, listen, that Lakers game, I know Jackson like completely outplayed him, and it looked bad, but a lot of it I wouldn't put on Eves. It was a lot of, I don't understand why the Pelicans would let LeBron and Luka turn the corner off pick and rolls and make Eves have to play up when you could just double him and make Gabe Vincent shoot, or make Rui Hachimura, whoever was out there, anybody but those two guys. So when they get playing in the middle of, from the free throw line down, and they have somebody on their hip and you're not doubling, and now Eves has to come up, guess who's right behind for the lob? Jackson Hayes. And that's what you saw over and over again. So it wasn't like Eves was getting beat over and over again. It was more the scheme was so bad and they just never changed it that Eves had to keep coming up, because you can't give Luka and LeBron floater after floater after floater. You can't do that. So you live with picking one. Instead of doubling them, you let Eves get cooked in the yo-yo, what you call the yo-yo. So I do think like a lot of it wasn't his fault, but he has some growth, obviously, on the offensive end. He has shown me times where he put the ball on the ground and hit people with moves and things. And then and that's like 20% of the time. And then 80% of the time, he looks like a guy that like, if you're coaching, if you ever been around like young kids and you're coaching kids, or you've been around kids who play ball, and you'd be like, okay, I need you to set the screen, and if they don't run into you, I need you to set it again. And if they don't run into you, I set. And if the ball comes to you, I need you to find Zion and find Trey. And like he does it like robotic. Like he's never looking at the rim. He's never looking to do like anything with the ball, even though like some of the time they like leave him wide open. And it's like, hey, you can put the ball on the ground and go score or go to the free throw line. Like you can do that. I want to see that from Eves. And I think, again, he's a raw player. And I think that kind of aggression comes with experience. And I think that is what you need, what he needs to have. And so once he turns that corner a little bit and gets more aggressive, I think, you'll see it. Carlo, again, showing you things on the defensive side of the ball that he showed you that he's athletic. He has instincts. And I think those are some of the instincts part is the part that I'm talking about with Eves, where like, you just kind of got a feel for it already. And like, it's not really something the coach is like, hey, I screened this guy and they both went with them. Let me go to the rim. Like Carlo has a little bit more of that feel, I think, because he's played a little longer. He's been in the G League and played in those games. So he has more of an instinctual feel. What I need Carlo to do is to also realize that you too can shoot the ball, you shoot it well. Like, don't be afraid to shoot the ball. Like they're passing it to you for a reason. There are times where he makes one, he misses two, and then like he gets timid and doesn't want to shoot anymore. And I think, again, with experience, with time, with more reps, that kind of, you see it with Trey, right? The way Trey has kind of blossomed with those reps and things. And I want to see that with him. With Trey Murphy, I just want him to balance out his game and to continue to play in that balance where you talked about it, about shooting and going to the rim. Shooting is what brings you, what has gotten you where you are is what he's probably best at. But like, he can put the ball on the ground and go to the rim, and you have to be the driving force. That's what Brandon Ingram had that. He knew that, like, okay, I got the ball. I can go to the rim. I can get to my spot. I can do those things. He just never, like, drew the fouls that, like, Trey got. Trey is, like, really good at doing the little foul baiting moves and things. He's good at that. So continue to push on that. But I think, with Trey Murphy's growth, you've seen how much work he's put in and what is showing on the floor. I think he just needs to continue to hit that same kind of speed and continue to do that. And I think, like, Jordan Hawkins is the one that I want him to get healthy. Like, he needs to get healthy. He needs to do whatever he needs to do with that back to get his back, squared away, whatever he needs to do. Because he's improving on all the areas around the shooting, right? The things that when you brought him in, you were like, he's skinny, he can't guard, he's small, he's this, that, and the other. And, like, you've seen him try harder on the defensive side. You've seen him go for chase down blocks. One of my favorite things that Jordan Hawkins does is rebound. He's one of the best rebounders on a team as a guard. Like, the numbers don't show it, but he's in there rebounding, getting boards and those things. And so, like, he's improved on everything around. But you're brought in to shoot, and you, whatever it is that's keeping you from getting to that dead eye shooter that you saw in college and what got you as a lottery pick, that needs to come back. Because when we're talking about the offense and people turning their backs and not hitting wide open shots, he has to be one of the driving forces to do that, because he is one of the best shooters on the team. And so I think there's a lot of potential, because these guys have contributed in ways that you're like, I need Eves to rim run and block, and he can do that. And I've seen it. I just need to see a little bit more. Carlo, like, you've seen these guys contribute in ways that you need for the Pelicans. You just need to see them get more confident, get more comfortable, and get healthy in terms of Jordan Hawkins.
Yeah, I look at a couple of things. As far as the bigs go, I think you hit it on the head with Carlo and Eves. And I think it boils down to simple things. They just need more confidence, right? Confidence comes from demonstrated ability, right? When you're able to show it and say, oh, I can do this. Next game you come out, you got a little bit more pep in your step. As rookies, both of them are rookies. I know Carlo's been around the team longer, but they're both technically rookies as NBA players. They're trying to figure out, okay, how do I do enough where I'm not getting taken off the court, but, like, how do I not do too much so that Zion's not mad at me because I took too many shots? Something like that. They're thinking too much, right? Mm-hmm. Versus just playing the game that you grow up playing and you know how to play, right? And again, if you look at teams, I love that you bring up the fact that, like, they'll take 1 or 2 shots and then be hesitant. I saw Peyton Pritchard and Derek White throw up 8, 9 threes a game. It doesn't matter if they miss the first 6; they're still shooting shot 7, and that's where you need the team to be. Again, the because of Zion and his gravity and his polarism, like, the Pelicans are expected to be a lot better than what they are. But, like, if you look at the gut of their roster, everybody is 21, 22, 23. Look at the Lakers. Look at all these other teams where these guys are in their primes. Almost none of the Pelicans are in their prime. So almost everyone's trying to figure out, who is the player I'm going to be, right, in the league, right? And so you're seeing different growing pains pop up at different times. You're right about Jordan Hawkins. I think a lot of his issues this season are physical. I think he just needs to be strong. In fact, if there was one thing I could ask of the Pelicans roster, that all of them lock themselves in the gym, either with Zion or whoever it needs to be, and everyone just gets stronger, right? Like, the Pelicans are a super athletic team, bouncy team. Everyone, even Jordan Hawkins, can get up, but they're a small team, right? And a lot of it's because of their age, because Eves is 20 years old, right? And he's getting banged up versus JV, and so, like, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they need to grow into their bodies. It was the same thing with Trey Murphy. He went to the offseason, gained 10 pounds. All of a sudden, he's a little bit stronger this season. Everybody needs to do that again going into the next season, because, again, a lot of these players are going to be around, and there's reasons they should be around, but they have to continue to grow in other areas. And part of it is just physically, like we opened the pod, when teams get physical with the team, dating back to 3 years ago, when Anthony Edwards was at the end of the season, said, BI, you're doing too much. He locked in, and all of a sudden the trajectory of the team, with 3 games to go, just went awry, because they brought the physicality and the Pelicans didn't know how to respond. I think that's still where they are, and that's the hurdle that they need to overcome, right? Like, obviously, Zion doesn't have that problem. We talk about the Lou Dort and what Zion said the other day about Dylan Brooks. It's like, he can't guard me, because if you try to get physical with Zion, you're gonna lose. That's not gonna work.
You're probably gonna
everybody get else on the roster, it kind of works, right? And so, like, that's that hurdle that I'm looking for growth from this young roster. Just how can you grow physically, and what are the elements in your game that you're going to continue to prove, and starting with confidence with a lot of them. Now, two guys that were brought up, and let's call them the new guys in the Brandon Ingram trade, you kind of had mixed results with, right? So let's start with Kelly Olynyk. Again, we've been talking about a player like Kelly Olynyk, not necessarily Kelly Olynyk, but a player like Kelly Olynyk making sense next to Zion, and it does make a whole lot of sense. Like, look at today's NBA, and more teams are trying the two big lineup because they're trying to respond to everybody else. OKC, the Lakers, everybody else has got 2 7-footers in the lineup. So now the Pelicans try it, but it's got to be different, because you brought up the point. Like, Zion's never going to be shooting 10 threes a game. So whoever's playing the 4 or whoever's playing the 5 probably needs to be able to shoot, because you can't just stand in the paint, because that's where Zion's going. That's where the other 5 opponents are just standing there waiting for Zion to be, right? And so, like, what have you seen from the Kelly Olynyk addition? And do you like the idea of Kelly Olynyk and what his skill set brings?
I do one, but I've been talking about Kelly Olynyk because every time they went up to Utah, I was like, he had how many points? He did what? And also, he played for the Miami Heat not too long ago, and he had some good times there. So I watched all of those games. So listen, I think Kelly is that is the kind of player that you want. I think I'm out on Zion as the undersized 4, and I'm in on Zion as the oversized point guard. And so I need to have those that crafty guy that can hit the outside shot, that can rebound, that can bang. But the thing about Kelly Olynyk is that you just talked about it, he's a big guy. And so he's one of those guys that can deal with physicality, that can dish out some physicality, which we all know from watching him play in Utah and the nightmare trip that they had 2 years ago out there where he just completely destroyed everybody. He has a lot of craftiness, he's quite literally the player, like a perfect player for the Pelicans. He's crafty. He's a veteran. So you got that experience among those young guys up front with Carlo and Eves. He's a floor spacer, right? And he's a big guy. Like, that's literally everything that the Pelicans needed for a person. So listen, I've been really happy with the Kelly Olynyk move. I think it shows you that Zion doesn't need to play the 4 for a successful team to be out there. Now, do you need better players and more players available? Yes. But I think Kelly Olynyk is the type of guy that you can have. He can play the 4. He can play the 5. He's not great as in like switchability defense, but if you can funnel them into Kelly Olynyk, like he's a decent defender, at the rim or, in the low post area. So like, and he's smart. And so he can use his hands and things and get into plays and take charges. He's just that's the kind of guy that you would want to have next to Zion, in between Zion and the 5 and whoever else is in between. So I think, obviously Kelly has his flaws. He's not athletic. And again, you talk about a league that's getting more athletic by the day, right? You got Wemby's coming in, you got Cooper Flags coming in, you got all these athletic and different ways and shapes and forms coming in. And so he's never going to be that athleticism, but that athletic. But what he lacks in athleticism, he makes up in IQ and craftiness. And I think, he's exactly the type of guy, especially as a low usage guy. Don't really need the ball in his hand, but can be effective in other different ways. So I really like the Kelly Olynyk fit. And I like the fact that it has forced, his ability to contribute has forced Willie Green into saying, okay, we need to play him up and play and start him, and obviously with people missing, and now it's kind of led into, okay, so Zion being further down, closer to guard, and having that guy in there, maybe there is something. So now we're starting to see the fruits of that labor going into offseason, where you build around that type of architect team, as opposed to all the wings and then Zion and then the center. You go Zion, wings, and then two bigs or a shooting big or something. But I really like the Kelly Olynyk fit.
Right, like a couple things on that. Like obviously, there's two players that are out for season, and if those two players come back, there's not necessarily two spots you're screaming at. So to take. So there's a decision have to be made. I do think what you saw from Zion and DeJounte Murray, there's something to that, right? Like, and again, whether Zion's the 1, the 2, whatever it may be, on ball is the point, right? And not in the post, right? Like at times, yeah, but on ball is the point. So how you get there matters a lot. I do think playing bigger is an advantage. And again, like whether it's Kelly Olynyk or whether it's players like not you made a great point, like low usage players like a Bol, like Jabari Smith, like guys who are at the 4, they're tall, they can play defense, but they also stretch the floor. I think the Pelicans would be looking to accumulate players like that to this roster, right? That aren't 6'3" and a defense hustle guy and trying to do the right. You need bigger players moving forward. And I think again, Kelly Olynyk's skill set makes a whole lot of sense with everybody else on the roster. Now, on the flip side of that, the other person that came over was Bruce Brown. And since coming to the Pelicans, he's really struggled. He had one, decent game, versus Utah where he did some good things across the board. But, like, he's smaller. He's not a great shooter. Like, I don't even think he's a great defender from what I've seen so far. And, like, I get he's kind of bringing that little toughness. He's getting a couple of fights and things like that. And maybe you need that since you lost Najee Marshall and you lost, Wu and Javonte Green, things like that. Maybe you need that. But, like, his contract's coming up at the end of the season. And we just talked about, hey, you need to add more shooting and taller players to this roster. So, like, these next 20 games, like, do you think there's something that either can tilt it one way or the other? Or do you think that this is kind of going to play itself out one way or the other?
Bruce Brown really, really makes me appreciate and miss Najee Marshall. I will. He really makes the Pelicans had something with Najee, man. They you never know what you got until it's gone.
And then maybe when the bats blow it up, maybe Najee makes.
Yeah. It's but I think that Bruce Brown is one of those guys that. And I told you who he reminds me of somebody, and I'm going to invoke this name, and everybody who listens to this podcast might close it, might throw the laptop, the phone, whatever you're listening on, throw it out the window. But he reminds me a lot of Solomon Hill. And what I mean by that is he's a guy that, like, had a really good, like, year and some change, like a playoff series in Solomon Hill's part, but, like, he was a part of a championship team. How much of did he like? He was a contributor, but he also played with like Jokic and he played with Jamal Murray. Like he played with like the best player in the world. So like, how much of it? And like he rolled those coattails into like the reputation as, hey, this is a championship guy, a veteran. And listen, when the Pelicans traded for him, I thought too, because I wasn't watching a lot of Toronto Raptors games. So I was like, okay, I know this guy from the Nuggets, right? I know who he is. I know what he does. I know he's the dunker spot king and do the flip. But it has not contributed. I mean, it has not shown itself. And yeah, please don't leave. I know. It just hasn't shown itself. And as far as like the toughness goes, you talk about like what Najee brought. Like Najee could back up some of his talk with his game, right? Like you saw Najee have a lot of good games with the Pelicans. And when Bruce Brown does it, it doesn't come off as the same kind of like, that's a tough guy. It's more of like, this guy's like a little annoying. So I listen, I think there's still obviously a lot of runway for this team, for him to do some things. And I know what David Griffin said about wanting to bring him back. And I just remind people that not David Griffin, but the Pelicans front office and this player and the player's Julius Randle looked everybody in the face and said, this is a long-term fit. He's going to be here for a while. And then he did not stay past that year. I know what people say. Sometimes actions are different. So I will be very interested to see what's going on with Bruce Brown at the end of this contract. As of right now, he has not shown any reason why you would need to bring him back or he's not replaceable. But again, there's more games left to play. And so we'll see. But as of right now, he hasn't given it to me the way, giving me the game the way I thought it was going to come. And so, here we are, and I'll be interested to see what that decision is at the end of the season.
Absolutely agree. Last thing, and then we'll get up out of here. Again, Trey's efficiency has been up and down since becoming one of the primary ball handlers so far. He's had some good games. Again, he had a good game last night versus Houston. He had some not so good efficient games and things like this. What are your thoughts on him transitioning into a primary factor on this team? Because like you talked about, Brandon kind of already knew I'm on the court, like it's my ball to have. And again, you could tell he was frustrated after last game, starting the first half so hot and then like shooting 5 times in the second half because Houston was guarding him defense. And someone asked him, like, yo, because they're defending you differently. Is that what led to that? He's like, no, we just weren't moving the ball. But like I've always said, like, and with Zion included and Brandon Ingram included, if you feel as if you're not getting the ball enough or the ball's not making its way to you, one way to fix that is to go fight on the defensive boards so that you don't have to wait for somebody to pass you the ball. The other way to fix that is to demand the ball. And I think that that's kind of the next step for Trey. Instead of watching CJ dribble or watching somebody dribble, go call for the ball, especially if Zion's not on the court. This is now Zion and Trey's team. Before whoever this top 5 pick becomes, now is your time to assert yourself. And by the way, the Pelicans are not winning. So if Trey shoots 100 times and he shoots too much so be it. It's not going to help where they are in the standings. This is the time of year where you play with some things. What are your thoughts on Trey just asserting himself a little bit more as a number 2 option?
Yeah, I think Trey is there's levels to growth for NBA players, right? You go from a rookie trying to find your way, right? If you're not one of those alpha guys, Luka, Wemby, whatever, you come in and you find your way, right? And then there's like people that stop there, like they find their way, and then there's a select group that go on. You're like, okay, you are in this a good basketball player. Now you're a contributor. So then you make a jump to contributor, right? And we saw Trey do that, the jump to contributor. The hardest jump to make is go from that contributor to the all-star level because there's so many all-star level players. There's not a lot of superstars, but there's a lot of all-star level players. Like, man, that guy, like CJ could be never been an all-star. Everybody would say he's an all-star level player. So there's that jump from contributor to all-star is the hardest to make. And I think Trey had to do so many things in order to get to where he is now that's all he's been working and focusing on, right? He was behind Zion and was behind Brandon Ingram. So your goal was to get better at defense, get better. Remember his stints in the G League. Get better on the boards, get bigger, get stronger. And that's what he's been focusing on now. Now he's paid like an all-star. Now you're the second guy. Now it's different, right? So you see it with the free throw attempts. People talk, he talk about they playing different and everything. It's hard going to the rim over and over again and scoring and getting knocked on your butt over and over again. Ja Morant, one of the most athletic people on the face of the planet, came and told everybody, I'm not dunking no more because that hurt. And when I'm falling and stuff, it hurt. It hurts to do that. And when you have to be the guy to do it over, that is why superstars are paid the way they're paid. That is why offensive engines are paid the way they're paid. That's why James Harden is paid the way he's paid. That's why Jaylen Brown, even though these guys aren't the best players on their team or whatever the case is, because driving an offense is hard, especially as the second option is the one option. And so now he has to figure his way out. You've now arrived as the pass contributor. You now are an all-star. You're getting paid like an all-star, right? I mean, as far as contract-wise and how you're viewed. you're paid like an all-star. You're expected to carry an all-star type level burden as well. It's hard, and you have to continue to push through that, and you have to continue to do the things and get the things right in the offseason that's going to make sure that you're ready to do this. Continue to get bigger, continue to get stronger, continue to work on conditioning and being able to play long stints, being guarded by physical defenders all day long who know that that's the best way to do it. They're not going to be able to block your shot, so they're going to be physical with you. You have to be aware of that. And so this is just part of his growth. And I think that as you know, as he's gone through this season as the second option and been being focused on and being defended against. This is the data that we talk about when you're watching the games that you need to be looking for the data to get. This is the data that we're talking about. So Trey needs to take this data, understand how he's being defended, understand how he's being schemed, and understand the burden that he has now. What do I always say? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. You get paid upwards of $100 million. Everybody don't get that kind of money. You got that money because it's not that you have to carry this burden. And I think that with another offseason, because Trey has not given me any reason to think that he can't go into the offseason and get better and work on the things that he needs to work on, because he's done it every single offseason. And so now this is now an opportunity. This might even be more of a, not a game thing, but more of a physical and more of a mental thing. Like now there is no more Brandon Ingram. You can't rely on him to take the load off, you know what I'm saying? And CJ can't take the load off every single game. You and Zion have to do it. And you see Zion does it, and that's why he got 200 plus million. And that's why everybody wants, you know, he's the face of this and doing all of this and all that. That's why, because he can do it on a night in, night out basis. Now it's time for Trey Murphy if he could do anything, if I could tell him to go watch Jaylen Brown. Him and Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is the you know, the star and the face of the Celtics. But who's the finals MVP? Who was the Eastern Conference MVP? I love Jaylen Brown. I love Jason Tatum. I'm here to get mine too. And you see it works out well for them. So that's the kind of guy that I would want him to go watch. Not so much for the game style, but for the mentality and for the way that he attacks being a second option and sometimes having to be a one option, even in games where the one option is there.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, I think that this summer is obviously going to be a big one. I expect a lot of the roster to honestly stay the same outside of getting guys back like Herb and DeJounte, hopefully at some point next year. But again, as far as like this draft pick coming up, as far as free agency, the list is you got to be able to shoot, you can't be short, or it's not going to work. It should not be brought to this roster. You're starting to figure out, you said, collecting data off what this team needs. Again, unfortunately, even though it's year 6, you haven't been able to collect data because Zion hasn't been on the court. And when he has on the court, even though he's been incredible, you haven't seen the peak level Zion, which I think you're starting to see now, to be able to figure out, okay, our 4 needs to be tall and needs to be able to shoot. You haven't been able to do that. And now you're starting to do those things. So these last 20 games or so, again, can Trey kind of turn that notch of being consistent as a number 2 option? Can some of the younger guys start to build some confidence to take into the offseason, to take into the offseason? That's what you're looking for. With that being said, Garrett, what you got left for the people?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Big shout out to everybody that pulled through. Bird Talk, I'll have an answer for that answer for you on the next one. I don't know who's a free agent right now, but I have an answer for you for the next one. So pull up to the next one, and I promise you I have an answer for you that time. But yeah, man, the Pelicans season has been going. It has been going. It has been a season. But now again, as we close to the end of this season, what are the data points? I would like to see Zion get to the end of this season playing the way he's playing, healthy, going to this offseason with this kind of, okay, I am here, and now like take it serious and hit the ground running. After the draft, this is the Zion that you want to see finish the season and go into the offseason attacking it this way, and see just some growth from other guys. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your socials. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.